when it comes to backend, your job mostly modern day backend, your job mostly is about building APIs. So just like we did, set up the server. Once you just set up the server, the next thing is start building APIs and endpoints, There's no time to waste. You could spend almost 3 to 4 months building APIs and endpoints. So you could spend up to 3 to 4 months building endpoint. And like I said, the endpoint can be up to 20, 30, 50, 60, 70. So the major work of a backend is building APIs. The modern day backend developer, your job is building APIs. Now these APIs are what we call the functionalities of a website. You build an API that will handle user registration. You build an API that will handle user login. You build an API that will handle recover password. You build an API that will, so many things. The API, if you are working for JAM, you build an API for JAM registration. You build an API to check JAM result. You build an API for JAM exam on the examination day. You build an API for change of name. So all those functionalities, you'll be building APIs. So what I will do is just a minute. So I will start again for the sake of those who may not really understand what I did the first time. So I will start all over again by creating a new folder. You can see my screen, right? B intro, and I'll call it 2 and 3. Wisdom, you are the backend developer. You're the one that decides whether all of them will be in the same file or not is your choice. But what I do is related APIs. I put them in one file. Then the ones that are not related, I put them in a different file. Now that way, my code base could have 1,000 lines, 2,000 lines. When I'm looking for something, I know exactly where to go to, like that. So sometimes I put all my authentication. You should actually okay, Cynthia. It's all my authentication, everything that concerns login, register, forgot password, reset password, all of them. I can put them in one file. Things that concerns maybe if I'm building for e-commerce, things that like search for product, get one product, order, add to cart, anything that concerns product, I can put them in one file. And anything that concerns admin, getting one customer, getting any customer details, I can put them in one file. But it's totally your choice how you want to arrange them. Now you arrange it in a way that if you're working alone, it's easy to find anyone. If you're working with people, it will also be easy for them to find any one of them. So I'll start now by opening this folder, with VS Code. That's the first thing. And then I'll still open it again with a terminal. Now you can use any terminal. You can also use the integrated terminal. Let me confirm that I'm recording. Yes, I am. So I am starting all over for the sake of those who may not have understood what we did the last time. So the first thing I want to do which of course you would always do, is to initialize npm. That's the first thing, npm init, and I will use -y as the flag and hit enter, and my mtm, I say mtm, sorry. This data information is created. I don't want to waste time. I just want to go ahead and install Express, npm I Express. I'm not adding any flag because this is just a normal dependency. Install Express, and it should install Express. How you know that you have installed Express is when you are seeing Express here automatically. You know that yes, you have installed Express. One more thing is so long as you have this package.json file, your project is secured. You can delete the node modules, delete the package lock, these two, you can delete them. So long as you have this one, you can always get this project back. But the moment this one is gone, this project is gone. You have to start from the beginning, like that. So I have this. Next thing I want to do is to create my first file, and it is called index.js. This index.js. So I'll copy it, create a new file, put index.js, hit enter. So the next thing I want to do is to set up my server. Now you understand the basic JavaScript. I don't need to write the basic JavaScript to prove to you. The next thing is just to proceed and set up a server. I'll say const express. You can call it anything, express server, whatever variable name you want. Express is equal to require express. And like I said, if you don't see it here, it means you haven't installed it yet. Okay, express. And then the next thing is to set up the backend app, const app. And then I will say this should run on the express function. This should run on the express function. And the next thing will be to tell you to start listening to requests. Listen at port 5000, and like I said, it mustn't be 5000. It can be 8000, it can be 7000, it can be 6000, it can be 4000, but try to avoid 3000. The reason is because front end always run on 3000, so you don't want to have a clash of ports where the front end and the back end will start dragging who will run on port 3000. So from 5000 upwards is open to back end. All right, and like that, the next thing will be to set up a function that will tell me when this server has started running, and I will say server started running. And then I will save it. Okay. All right, Wisdom, go ahead, use the mic. Where is Wisdom? Yeah, Wisdom, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
My question is based on the port. Since you will be hosting this on a server, let's say you are using port 5000 and another developer somewhere is also using port 5000. Won't there be a clash of the ports?
Okay. The thing is this: when you are going to be deploying this project, there is a different procedure or technique involved, and we're going to talk about it as the next step. You know what? Let me just talk about it so that we'll not waste time. Wisdom, I'm going to answer your question, but let me do it Wisdom, I'm going to answer your question, but let me do it practically so that when I explain it, you understand what I mean. So Control L, and I will say node index, I think it's called index.js. Yes, my server has started running. So my server is working. Now I want to define this port. I don't want to hard code this port here. I will then say const port is equal to process.env.port or 5000, and then bring this port and replace it here. So to answer your question, Wisdom, now here we are saying that our port will have either of these values. It will either be this or this. So whenever you see double pipe, it means or. Double pipe means or. And I think, did we talk about that? But don't worry, we're going to also visit it more. Double pipe means or. So it means that when you deploy this project, or even while you are developing it, either of them, there is something called the process environment. So the process environment is where you store your environmental variables that you don't want people to see, things that people will not see so that they will not hack your website. One of them is your port. So one of them is your port. The double pipe is after the coily braces. For me, I'm actually sitting on top of, after the coily braces, you see the next line there. You see the backward slash and then the double pipe there too. So you tap it 2 times. The pipe is slash. You press it 2 times to get the pipe. So your process environment is a place where you store all your environmental variables, things that people will not see. Now, I'm going to also show you how to save those variables too, but we're taking it one step at a time. One of those variables is your port. Now we are saying, whenever this project is running, please check if I have a port defined in my process environment. If I have a port there, use that port. If I don't, then fall back to 5000. That is one way of doing it. Now, the second thing I want to say is that when you deploy this project, wherever you deploy it, you are buying a hosting and you are buying a domain. So that domain, like I said, is actually an IP address. So no 2 backend have the same IP address and port. So even though your port numbers are the same, your IP addresses are not the same. And they will have a port number for you there. So this function here would then be, when you deploy it online, you will be saying, if there is a port number to use there, use it. But if there is none, fall back to 5000. But so when you deploy it online, it means you already have an IP address attached to a port number. Now, even if the port numbers are the same, the IP addresses are not going to be the same. So that's what I think that should answer your question. Actually, you add dot to the port numbers when you are trying to call the port numbers, but not on the back end. Joshua, you add that port, and I'm going to show you how to add that dot, but not here on the back end. Here on the back end, you're just specifying the port number. But when you are calling the port number, maybe with an IP address or without IP address, you have to add the dots. So I have this. This is my server, and it's running. But if you come here, this server, you will not see any changes. For example, if I add extra G and save, you see no change, nothing is happening. This is because once the server starts running, it has started running automatically. If you make any new changes, you need to stop the server and start it again. You need to stop the server and start it again before it can pick up new changes. So I will do Ctrl+C to cancel and then run it again. Now I have the new changes. Now, but if I still go ahead and make a change and save it, Now it will not work. I need to cancel it again, run it again before it picks up the new changes. No, you can't do this. You can't. No, Joshua. Now this port number, if you want to write it in small letters, you can if you want. But we want to be able to differentiate between which one is an environmental variable and which one is our normal variable. So environmental variables are typed with capital letters. So anywhere you see that variable, const, the name, you know this is an environmental variable, like that. So, but this one now, const app, is a normal variable. This one is also a normal variable. So the difference there is one of them is an environmental variable, variables that their values should be hidden. And then the normal other ones are just normal variables. So, but you can also type it in small letter if you want, but for easy identification, when you are looking at for which one is an environmental variable, you look out for the ones that are typed in block letters, like that. So that is it. Now, but one thing I want to talk about, which there is no time, there's no need wasting time, is the ability for this server to pick up new changes, restart itself, and start working again. So if I make a change, the server should automatically restart itself and pick up again. Any changes I make, the server should automatically restart itself and pick up again. That is where the second dependency we installed comes in, the Nodemon. So the Nodemon is a dependency or is a package or a function that will detect whenever there is new changes on this backend and then restart the server. If there are new changes, it will restart the server. But note that I told you, if you deploy this project to the online, there is no need restarting it, because if you restart it for a minute, it has lost 1 minute. If you restart it for 2 minutes, you've lost 2 minutes. So that means that online, when it has been deployed, there is no need for restarting. Therefore, Nodemon is a dev dependency. Why is it a dev dependency? It is a dev dependency because you need to restart your server only on development, not on production. You need to restart your server, or the need to restart servers is only while you are developing, not when you have deployed it to production. So that is why Nodemon, that is responsible for restarting the server, is called a dev dependency. Do you have any question on that? And so to install it, I will cancel this and then type in npm I Nodemon. The Nodemon is one letter, sorry. So I put it Nodemon is one letter. And Nodemon is responsible for restarting our server every time we make new changes. I'll save this. Now I've installed Nodemon as a dev dependency. And to confirm that, oh my God, I installed it as a normal dependency. So what I will do is I will remove it. I will uninstall it. So I will say npm uninstall Nodemon. So I want to remove Nodemon because I installed it as a normal dependency, which I don't want it to be. Because if you install it as a normal dependency, it means it will run on production. And I don't want it to run on production because it will be restarting the server. So I will uninstall it and it's gone. So that is why you're not seeing it here again. But then I will install it again, but this time as a dev dependency. And then enter. Now I have Nodemon as a dev dependency. So to confirm that this is actually working, I will say Nodemon, no longer node now, Nodemon run index.js. Okay, I need to put run Nodemon run index.js. Do I need to use a script? Let me use a script there. All right. There's a trick to it. The trick to it here is adding script. Now, everybody will definitely add script. Everybody will definitely add script. Now, this is a test script, but I want to set two scripts. One will be called the start script. One will be called the dev script. Now, this is the script that will run this app online. This is the script that will run it during development. That's the difference between these two scripts. So this is a test script. We didn't add anything as a test script. You can delete it if you want. You can modify it if you want. The most important thing here is these ones I'm adding now: a start script and a dev script. A start script is the script that will run this backend. It will start the backend project online when it's deployed. And then a dev script will start it while we are developing. So when it is deployed, I want to use Node to run index.js. But when I'm developing, I want to use Nodemon to run index.js. So any question here? We have two scripts. The first script is using Node to run the index.js. The second script is using Nodemon to run the same index.js. Now, both of them will do the same thing with different dependencies. Node is a different dependency. Nodemon is a different dependency. So the two scripts, you can use any one in development, but you can only use one in production. And second thing is, I'm not adding this because I tried to run it and it didn't work. No. Before you deploy this project, you must add a start script, because you will not be there to type npm start or node start. No, you will not be there. When you deploy it to cloud, the cloud storage will only start this backend by calling the start script. If you don't have a start script, your backend will not start running. So that is why you must add a start script. The dev script is me just adding it so that you can call it anything. It doesn't have to be called dev. You can call it anything. But this one must be called start, because you will not be there to start it. Once you deploy it, the cloud that you deployed it to will start it for you. And it's going to be calling start script. And if you don't have start script or you misspell it, it will not run like that. So any question on this script? Now, to test this out, I will come here and say npm run the start script. Now it is running the start script and I have server started running. I will cancel it and then call npm run the dev script. And it says, did you mean run dev? Yes. Now, do I have to tell you npm run dev? Okay, now it's running it and you see, so the two of them are doing the same thing. Here we use Node. Where is it? Here we use Node to run index.js when we called npm start. So calling npm start, that is, we are calling the start script. And that is why you have Node running index.js and you hear server started running. And then we move to the second one. I will say npm run dev. And then Nodemon called dev. And we started. Now this one, if I go to my app and make any changes, notice what will happen. For example, I will add ggggg and save. So you see, it says restarting due to changes, starting index.js, and then started running again. If I remove it and save it, you see restarting due to changes. So Nodemon will be restarting the server for every single time you make changes to your backend. It will restart it and run it again. It will restart it and run it again. just like that. But note, Nodemon is only used during development, not on production. Because once you start the server on production, you don't want to stop it. Now, except you are still developing, as in continuous integration, continuous development. You develop, you push it again, you develop, you push it again, you develop. So as you are pushing, it will keep redeploying, but the server is still there, has not stopped. It hasn't restarted. Because the moment you restart it, it has lost a few number of minutes or seconds. So if you are doing any calculation based on minutes, that's gone. What I mean by both of them do the same thing is that both of them are running this index.js. Both of them are running this index.js file. So it is either you type node index.js, that means you're asking Node to run it, or nodemon index.js, that means you're asking Nodemon to run it. Now, if you want to call the name of the script, you use npm start to call the start script, or npm dev to call the dev script. Now, you don't have to call it dev, you can call it anything. Let me see and save this. So I will copy it so that I don't make mistake, and come here, cancel this, Control C, and then npm run whatever this thing is, hit enter, and it will still run. So it's not compulsory that you must name it dev, you can name it anything, but this start script, it must be called start. Now, these things I am stressing like this, it is because they do come out in exam questions. I mean, both international questions and exams. So most times when you see me stressing something, it's because I know that these things do come out. Not my own exam. They may come out in my own exams, but it do come out in exams around the world. The difference between production and development is this. Now that I'm still typing the code with my system, still working on it, this is called development. I am still building the backend. I am still building. I'm not done. But the moment I am done with the whole functionality, or all the functionalities, and I deploy it online, the way you have Paper, OP, MoneyPoint, all of them being deployed, and they are used currently, that is called production. They are already being used real time. That is called production. So development means it is still in the, that's the word now, development phase. We are still in the pipeline. We're still working on it. We're not done. But once we test it, confirm that everything is fine, and we deploy it, it has become production. So we've been deployed. Once you deploy it, it is now production. It is no longer development. So that's what we call production. That's why I'm telling you now. I'm telling you this is what will be in the script. These two scripts. I'm telling you now, so you know that, okay, whenever you build your backend, you need two scripts. Now, if you don't want to add this one, it's up to you. But this one is compulsory. You must add the start script, because that is the only way your server is going to start online when you deploy to production. It's going to call the start, and then the backend will start running 24/7. All right, so that is all about setup for the server. Do you have any more questions? You set up the server, you set up the script, you set up the port, and the server is running with Nodemon. Any question? Wait. What if I do, because I called Control S. Yep, it's working. Because I changed the script name. Don't worry, you didn't miss much. We are still working on it. You didn't miss much. All right. Next thing is to see whether this backend we built is now responding to requests. No. Bisola, you're not adding it to each of the file. You are adding it to your package.json file. Now, bear in mind that the package.json file contains all the information about this backend. So it also needs to know the script that is responsible for starting this project or for running it. So you're not adding it to any JavaScript file. You are adding it to the package.json file where you have the details of everything that is running this backend. That is where you add the script. And you only get to add 2 scripts. If you want to add 4, sometimes I do add 3. I add 3, 4, 5, depending on what I'm using to build my backend. So, but these 2 are like the most basic, and one of them is compulsory. The start script is very, very compulsory. Without it, this backend will not start on production. Like that. They are the script to start the backend. Yeah, these are the script to start the backend. All right, now what we want to do is just a simple test to see if this server we've built now can actually listen to requests and send back a response. So this is what I will do. I'll say my app, since you are listening to requests, the app, if I get any GET request, so I'm trying to handle a GET request on the backend application. I know that you know the difference between GET request, POST request, PUT request, and PATCH request. So I'm trying to handle a GET request on the app. The app here, I mean this backend application that is running on the server, and the same app that is listening on port 5000. Now you can actually test which port is running on by adding a little string concatenation here. Now this is not compulsory. This is me just trying to find out which port is currently being used. So whatever port that is currently being used, it will log it out on the console. Okay, I have an error. It says, oh, this app.get, this is where I'm having the error. I haven't handled this yet. Iwi could reset. Are you kidding me? All right, now my server is back and is running on port 5000. If I change this to maybe 8000 and save it, you see the server has changed and is running on port 8000. If I change it to 8080 and save, it's now running on port 8080, like that. So I want to test the GET request now, but let me return this back to 5000. 8080, and I say if there is a request on /Nathan, let's go with Nathan. I don't know why I like using Nathan. So if there is a GET request on the endpoint /Nathan, I want you to do something for me. That's not even Nathan, that's Nate. Okay. Or let's put it well, Nathan. Yeah, I say Nathan, but I write something else. So if there's a GET request on this endpoint, now remember that when we visited the type code API, type code JSON placeholder, we had a list of endpoints here. On this free backend, we had a list of endpoints, and now these are the different endpoints: users, to-dos, /photos. So this is something we are trying to create. We're trying to create something like this endpoint. Of course, that is what will be your job. So I will close this. So if there is a request made at this endpoint, a GET request, not just any request, but a GET request at this endpoint, I want you to run a function. So this is how we start, because the moment you start, you can't stop again. That's one thing with backend. The moment you start building APIs, you started building APIs, you can't stop again. So no, there is no difference between 5000. Actually, these are just open port numbers for tests. So it has nothing, it's just port numbers. It has absolutely nothing to do with the speed of your backend. No, it has nothing to do with the speed of your backend. So if there's a GET request on this, I want you to run this function. I want you to run this function. What do I want? It's simple. I want you to take the response or take the request that was sent and then take a response. Then inside the function, console log the request. Console log the request. So I'll save this and try to make a request to this endpoint and see if it's going to log anything here. All right, so how do I make this request? The easiest way is to use my browser because it's the browser that runs the front end. So first I will say localhost. Now the reason why I am using localhost is because localhost is the IP address or is the domain that points back to my PC. So if you type in localhost is just the same domain. It means the domain that will point directly back to your computer. So it's not going outside, it will still point back to your computer. That's what this localhost will do. The next thing is to put the port. The port is 5000. So you put colon here, which is ... colon, and you put 5000, then / Nathan. I think so. / Nathan. If I hit enter, now this will keep spinning. It will keep spinning. But if you come to here, you see that I am console logging so many things. And I think this is where it becomes confusing, but I will try to simplify. Whose mic is on? I will try and simplify. So, but we are getting a request. We are getting a request. So, what do I need to do to simplify this? Now I will go and simplify. When you make a request, whether a GET request or a POST request or anything, it comes with a request object, which is what we have here. That request comes with a request object. Inside the request object, of course, you are seeing the local host here that is telling you the host. Inside the request object, there are so many things in it. The first one is the request headers. The request header. The next one is the request body. The next one is the request. There are so many of them, which I was thinking this will explain the URL, the method, the different things in that object. So whenever you make a request, so many things come together as the request object. So many things. Now, a lot of them, you will not be concerned about them. It has nothing to do with you. But some of them, you pay attention to. And I will tell you the ones to pay attention to. So, this is it. Let's say we want to get the request.method. We want to know the method or the request method, the request type that was made. I'll save this. Whenever there is a GET request on this endpoint, I want you to run a function. What the function will do is take the request object and take a response object. I'm not doing anything with them. Just console log the request object, but console log the method inside that object. I just want to see the method. So I will come to my browser. Now I know that this thing is not deployed online. It is running on my computer. So the domain name will be localhost because it is running on my computer, not deployed online. So I will not use something like www. or HTTPS and so on and so forth, because this is running on my computer. The domain name will be localhost. Localhost is the domain name that will point back directly to my computer. So it is a domain name that will go out and then turn back and come back to my computer and pick up any server that is currently running on my computer. That is what localhost will do. So it will go out, do a U-turn, and come back and pick up the current server that is running on my computer. That is what localhost is. Now the port here is 5000. So this port is the port that we specified here. We are saying use the port from the process environment. But if there is no port in the process environment, fall back to 5000. So currently there is no port here, and that is why our port is 5000. And trying to make that request, you add the port here to be 5000. And then add the endpoint to be / Nathan. If I hit enter, it will keep making this request. And you see here, it is console logging get. Why? Because we just want to get the request method. And the method is a get request. That's why you see these two things here. And if I change this and say console log the request body and save this, now you see that the request body is undefined because, and I'll explain why it's undefined. The get request doesn't have a body. It's only a post, patch, and put that has body. So that is why this is undefined. Now that is one. The second thing is this thing keeps rolling. It is not stopping. If you do your users like this, that it keeps rolling and rolling and rolling and rolling and rolling. There is no response. The users will say you have no idea what you're doing. As a matter of fact, they will not even talk to you, the developer. They will be calling the manager. That manager don't know what they do there. But it's not the manager's fault because the manager is not the one coding the project. As a matter of fact, I don't even think the manager will even see the code base. He has not even seen the code before. And he may not even see it, but he has seen the developers. He may not even see the developers. Yeah, he will just be going from meetings to meetings and meeting head of department. May not be able to get down to development office and see the people who are actually writing the code, except he's a good developer or is a good manager. So this is rotating because it's not returning a response. Whenever you are not returning a response back, know that the server or the request will keep hanging because you are not returning a response. So for any request, you should return a response. You must return a response. Otherwise, that request will keep hanging. So how do you return a request? You just come here and say response.send. Whatever you want to send. You can be sending a string as hello and save it. So what I'm doing is response.send a string hello. And if you look here, I have a string called hello. So if I refresh now, I get hello. It's not hanging again. It's running and it's refreshing. Hello. And I don't want this console log again. I will remove it. And I'm still getting hello. I can change the hello and say I don't want hello alone. I want maybe hello Nigeria. And save it. And if I refresh, I see hello Nigeria. Like that. So whenever you are sending a response, you are at liberty of deciding what kind of response to send. You can either be sending a string, you can be sending HTML tags, which can be HTML pages. Like I told you before, backend before used to be you write a backend to render HTML pages. Are you kidding me? To render HTML pages. Okay, so you decide what kind of response to send. You decide what kind of response to send. And here I'm deciding to send a string. You can send HTML pages. You can send arrays. You can send objects. You can send object of arrays. So you know what? Let's send an array first. I'll send an array of strings. So one will be yes. Another one will be no. Sorry. Where did I miss it? I missed this one. Yeah, the next one will be hello. So I am sending back an array whenever there is a request on this endpoint. So if I save it now and go back to my browser and refresh it, you see now I have an array being returned. Yes, no, hello, like that. I can also decide to send an object instead of sending an array. I change it to an object and I say first name. First name is David. Last name is Samson. Yeah, so now I am sending an object. If I save it and refresh, okay, Samson is not defined. Oh, it's supposed to be a string. Sorry. Save it again and refresh. So now I see an object, David and Samson. But notice something. Note, when you are sending a response, if you are sending a response to a front end, or you are sending a response to a back end, the format of that data should be in JSON. It should be in JSON. Now, even though that in this object is automatically converting everything to JSON, when we did, let me see, Control Z. Okay. Yeah, it's automatically sending them as, yeah, JSON, but that's because I added them as quote strings. What if I add something like 34 and save and refresh it? Now you see 34 is not coming as JSON, it's coming as numbers. So when you are sending data, really, you can't hear me. If you can hear me, please drop a thumbs up. If you can hear me, drop a thumbs up, please. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Can you hear me? All right, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so back to what I was explaining. Now, these things are simple. Even though this is the first time you are seeing it, you still have 1 month to go. So by the time we treat it today, tomorrow, you get used to it and you'll be building your own APIs. But I just want to teach you the basics. So when we are sending data, the format should be in JSON. It must be in JSON. That is the format with which we are sending data. So sending this data like this without it being in JSON is wrong. So therefore, instead of sending response.send, we do something like this, response.json. So these two are doing the same thing. If I save it now, the both of them are doing the same thing. if I refresh here, sorry, this one is running, this other one is not running because you can't send response twice. Hope my server is running. Okay. It's actually formatting. Okay, it's understood. I get. Okay, but to make sure that your data is sent as JSON, we don't use send. Rather, we use JSON. So we are explicitly saying, please send this data as JSON. And my browser is formatting it. That is why you're not seeing this thing in JSON. But if I go and use another, if I call it with code or call it with Postman, you'll definitely see it that is coming as JSON. All right. Any question so far? Because we've been able to create one endpoint and one API. What it does is send back an array. Any question so far? Any question? Any question? Type your question. Now, this is what backend is all about. I understand that some of things here are the first time you're seeing it. That's fine. We'll take it slowly. But ask questions where you are confused so that you don't get confused throughout. Ask questions where you are confused. Okay, wisdom. Use the mic. Where is wisdom? Wisdom. Yeah, wisdom, go ahead. Idris, what's wrong? Okay, Walter.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, so my question is the app.get. I thought that the get is supposed to be a request from the front end. So are we making that? Are we doing that from the back end? That app.get, is it a code for the back end?
Okay. The app.get here, you can mute now. The app.get here, we are not making a request. Rather, we are handling a request that was made. So just see it this way, that this app here, this whole thing here, is like we creating a robot that will stand, not a robot, a human being that will stand at the airport and hold a placard with somebody's name on it. So it is only that person's name, or it's only the person bearing that name that it will attend to. It will not attend to anybody else. So here we are creating a robot and giving it a name and says it has to be a GET request. So if anybody anywhere makes a GET request, then it means that that request is for you. But furthermore, not any type of request, not just any GET request. It has to be a GET request that is targeted at /Nathan. So if any front end makes a GET request, then that request is for you. But in addition, make sure that that request is coming to an endpoint like this. So if it is not this endpoint, ignore that request. Ignore it. It's not for you. You're not handling it. But if it is a GET request and they are making that request to / Nathan, then I want you to run this function. That's what we are saying. So we are saying, server, please listen to requests that will be made. If a GET request is made, pay attention to that request. Furthermore, if that request is made to this endpoint / Nathan, then it means that the request is particularly for you. So therefore, run this function. Now, this is just one endpoint. You are going to have this thing duplicated in so many. And here we have this one to be Nathan, we have this one to be Nathaniel, we have this one to be maybe not a GET request, but this time a POST request. And then this one will be a POST request, but to Nathaniel, like that. So you're going to have so many endpoints, and the server will be listening to all of the requests. When any of that request matches, it will then pick the function to run. This one you are saying hello, are you lost? Don't be lost. I understand. Now back simple, very, very simple. You know, I was a front-end developer. Then I was a front-end developer. When people talk about backend, I will say, oh, no. Backend is not for me. Backend is not for me. One day, I was just stumbling through backend, and then I learned backend. Since that day, I fell in love with backend. So for me, I would say that I learned front end, but I fell in love with back end because back end is sweet. It's actually sweeter than front end. So that's why I fell in love with back end. And it goes the same, not just me. A lot of persons I teach, they say the same thing. Back end is actually sweeter than front end. I will skip back end. I will skip front end and become a back end developer full time. It happens. But initially, at the first time, trying to understand all these things take a while. So somebody was asking which one is the endpoint, which one is the API. Now, the endpoint is this / Nathan. The same way we had it in that JSON type code. Where is that type code again? Type code. The endpoints here are /post, /comment, /albums, /photos, and these are names that they chose. You can choose any name you want. It can be /photos and save it. And then when you come here, you change this Nathan to photos. And it will still do the same thing. It's still doing the same thing. So here, this is the endpoint. But a combination of both this function, the endpoint, the request type put together is what we call the API, Application Programming Interface. Magam. Yes. After creating the endpoint, you are going to share it as a documentation. Now, let me show you an example of what documentation is. These are just basic endpoints I created, and I'll open one. So if I open this here, this is a documentation of different documentation. Now, if you go to the authentication, you see one of them is sign up. If I click on sign up, and this is going to, okay, you are not going to see it, but this is what documentation will look like. And this one is going to / login and so on and so forth. That you may not see all of them. Okay, here they are. This is / sign up. Yeah, and the next one is going to be / login. Okay, this is / activate user account. / activate user account. So there are going to be so many of them. You will combine all of them together like this and send as a documentation to the front end. Now, each of these things is an endpoint. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You open this side again. Inside here you have 1, 2, 3, 4. So before you count everything inside these folders, some of them have folders inside folders. All of them put together, this is exactly what is your job as a back-end developer. So welcome to back-end. The earlier you start understanding, the better for you and I, because you're not going anywhere. So for those who are for those who are asking whether you can cram it, there's absolutely nothing to cram. Yeah, absolutely nothing. The only reason why it is scary is because this is your first time. But if you pay attention to it, they all follow the same pattern. That's one thing with backend. Backend will always be the same everywhere, no matter the kind of project. But the front end are usually different. You can't have exactly the same front end. For different applications. No. But when it comes to backend, they can be exactly the same. No. It's not an endpoint. No, it's not. Endpoint is different. That's a different HTML like that. But we're not using HTML here, are we? We're not. We're just building endpoint and sending back result. So I can take this a step further. Let me clean up. I'll clean this up and say I want to define an array here. Const students array here is equal to an array. Inside this array, I have Stella, Cynthia. Oh no, as a string. Cynthia, Joy, Chooks, who again? Karim, who again? Peters. So I have an array that I defined here. What I want to do is, if there is a request made on the endpoint students to get a list of all the students, I want to send back this student array. Very simple. So I have an array of students. Now, whenever a request is made to / students to get a list of all the students, I want to run a function. What the function is doing is just sending back the names of all the students as a JSON, and that's it. So if I come back here and if I refresh this will not work. It says cannot get photos. The reason why it's saying cannot get photos is because there is no endpoint defined as / photos. So here we don't have any endpoint defined as photos, but rather we have students. So I will replace these photos with students and hit enter. Now I have an array of students. This array, you can modify it to be something different. It may be an array of objects if you want. You can modify it more. David, and then last name, Samson. And you can then have this to be more than one, duplicate it like this, and then save. So in this case now, if there is a GET request, npm, this is if you have a start script. Now I have a start script here, so I can do npm start because I have a start script. But if you don't have a start script, it will not run. Rather, you need to run node index.js. So this npm run start will work if you have a start script. Now, the local host is a domain that points back to our computer. All right. So here, if I save this and refresh this, I have it sending me back this data. Voila. Okay, so I think at this point you should have questions. What is okay? Not wisdom, not that the API is made up of several endpoints. No, each endpoint, each API has its own endpoint. /user is attached to one API. /student is another API. /login is another API. So all of the APIs have their own endpoint. So for you to get that API to work, you need to be making requests to that particular endpoint, which is what we tested with this JSON placeholder. Because for we to get the API that will send us posts, 100 posts, we need to make it to this endpoint. Now, to get the API that will send us 500 comments, you need to make it to this endpoint. So each of these endpoints is attached to different APIs. Now, if I ask you, looking at this endpoint, how many APIs do you think was built? This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So that means this is a total of 6 APIs because each endpoint is attached to a particular API. No. There is nothing like start script, no. But there is TypeScript. TypeScript is a superset of JavaScript. Let's say it is the advanced JavaScript. So it is either you are writing JavaScript or you are writing TypeScript. But I don't think there is anything as StartScript. StartScript is just the script inside our package.json here, but not a programming language. TypeScript here is a programming language, the superset of JavaScript. Now, there is no section called the API. I said this function together with the endpoint, together with the request type is what we call the API. Put together, all of them together is what we call API. But if you want to separate them, this is the request type, this is the endpoint, and this is the function to handle the request. So, but if you add the three of them together, it's called an API, application programming interface. So it's there to handle or do something. And what is doing that thing is this function. So there is no API without a function. There is no API without an endpoint. There is no API without the request type. Like that. So any question so far? Any question? I feel like I should stop it here. I will continue tomorrow because if I take it any step further now, we're going deeper. So I'm feeling like to stop it here. But if we can continue, we continue. I want to hear from you. What is wrong? Now, there is one thing when it comes to coding. There's this saying that says, if you believe you can, then you can. If you say you can't, then you can't. At the point where coding begins to make sense to you is a point where you ask yourself, the people who are doing it, do they have two heads? If they can, I can do it. Yeah, it was my mom. She's the one that put all of those things in my head. My mom was like, I woke up, I told my mom I want to be a pilot. She said, you can do it. Another day, I want to be a doctor. You can do it. I want to be an engineer. You can do it. She said, whatever you put your mind in that you can do, you can do it. Now, I am someone who is experienced, and I'm telling you, it is actually easier to understand backend than it is to understand the front end. The front end, it is quicker to understand the front end. Now, it's very quick to understand the front end. But front end, you don't end it. It doesn't have an end. You keep learning it. You keep writing CSS and so on and so forth. But for the back end, once you understand the pattern the first time, that same pattern is what you use across the world for any back end project. The same pattern. All right. We are going to explain the difference between requests. Steven, remind us tomorrow. We'll explain the difference between requests and the response. I did now wisdom. What I'm doing is I'm making a request here, and I'm going to be sending back this student array. This student array is an array of objects. So when I make a request, which I did here by coming here, this is /student. If I send it by hitting enter, it's returning these things. These same informations here are the same thing you have here. Just that this is now in JSON, and if I refresh, it's still getting me the same data. So I made a request. I have we are going to continue tomorrow. Now the thing is this: we've actually entered into the backend, and I don't want anybody to get lost at this point. If you feel like you're lost, you know what? Let me just share these. I'll share this to GitHub. I'll share it to GitHub. If you feel like you're lost at this point, please just visit the code. Go through. I say I will delete all these things. I haven't deleted these old ones that I put here. I will delete them. If you feel like you're lost, please go through it. Go through it and make sure you understand what I did there. Be very sure that you can do it. Because that's the only way you become a good backend developer. Now, the thing is this: the backend is different. Backend and frontend is different. If I try to push this code to GitHub, it will be trying to push node modules together with it. but you are not supposed to push Node modules to GitHub. You are not. So that is where git ignore comes in. Now I'm going to explain what git ignore is, but not today. Git ignore. So .git ignore is me telling Git all the files that I want it to ignore and not push to GitHub. One of them is Node modules. Like this. So I don't want you to push Node modules to GitHub. So what I'll do is I git init git add dot and then git commit, which is this. Then link it to the remote origin. And then git push the master branch. Okay, and if I refresh this, I have my codes here. So I can share this on the general platform. I think so. All right. I was playing GitHub code. Adamu, I don't understand the question. Yes. Wisdom, the backend we are building is both for web and for mobile, for dashboard, for anything, any software at all. Any software. Adamu, I don't understand what you mean by GitHub codes. But I'm sure I've taught you guys GitHub now, haven't I? How to push to GitHub is very, very important. I think I would have taught that after the 4th class. It's compulsory. I would have after the 4th class. All right. So do we have any question before we end the class? Only 16 persons. Now we have 99 members and we have only 16 persons. Oh. Just how to drag? No, that's not true. Really? Just how to drag and drop? We didn't talk about pushing, committing, and all of that. Really? Okay, I want to understand what the yes sir means. The yes sir or the yeah, does it mean that we didn't actually learn how to push to Git directly? Just drag and drop. Okay, so remind me tomorrow. That is where we're going to start from. It's very, very important. There is no developer without GitHub and Git. No developer without Git and GitHub. So that's where we'll start from tomorrow. All right. Good night, Abby. Goodbye. See you tomorrow.